Margaret discovers something that makes her reevaluate her entire life when she is still figuring out how to deal with her husband's passing. Margaret Freeman made a life-changing choice when she was 18 years old. Her father, who was affluent, disapproved of the charming and humorous Daniel Hernandez she married. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. Her father had yelled, "You marry that lowlife and you'll get nothing from me, Margaret. You'll see what love really is when you get to live in a one-bedroom rat hole with roaches crawling up the walls." Margaret, though, ignored me. She was positive that she would always love Daniel. At all. Returning to that little flat seemed lovely at first. There was no space, yet there were no insects or rats. Margaret secured employment as a large hotel receptionist, while Daniel began working for the post office. Daniel had told Margaret, "Job security, love," in response to her insistence that he look for work that pays more. "I need to be certain that we will have a pension to support ourselves in our later years." Margaret could understand Daniel's fixation on safety. Had he not seen his father die in a building site accident, leaving his mother to survive on the meager social aid handed to her? He had been an illegal, with no pension for his wife and 5 kids, no insurance. Daniel was determined that neither Margaret nor their kids would experience the same situation. Daniel thought that working for the post office would provide them with such guarantee, but with 2 kids to support, 2 meager wages didn't go very far. Margaret and Daniel were thrifty, but they spent every penny they made. Seldom was there much left over for savings. After that, their 2 kids grew up, moved out, and began their own lives. After their daughter relocated to Brazil and their son went to Alaska, Margaret and Daniel found themselves back where they had begun. Margaret's father passed away at this period. It would seem that neither time nor Margaret's happiness had softened his heart, and he bequeathed his whole enormous fortune to his youngest son, who was free from any guilt. Daniel was inconsolable. With bitterness, he remarked, "This is what loving me cost you, Margaret. The life you deserved." "No," Margaret firmly replied to him. "I wouldn't trade what we have for all the money in the world." However, after 38 years of marriage, Margaret began to worry if Daniel still loved her, as he became quiet and aloof. Daniel then began working longer hours at his job. A lot of overtime. "This new mail with overnight delivery is it. It must be resolved around the clock," he said. Margaret, too, noted that Daniel smelt different when he got home at 2 or 3 in the morning. Margaret never cared for lily-scented soap, but he smelt like lilies. It brought to mind her paternal grandma, a someone she had never warmed up to. Daniel no longer made love to Margaret unless it was the weekend, and he smelt like flowers. Margaret first convinced herself that it was all in her head, but nothing changed. Daniel smelled like flowers. He still returned home every night, and worst of all, their joint account was empty 2 years later. Margaret once attempted to bring up the topic with Daniel, but he became irate with her. "Do my purchases also need to be reported? My money is involved. I merited it." Margaret cried silently every night when he returned home and turned his back on her in the bed where they had conceived their children, and she didn't say anything else after that. Their retirement plans were seldom discussed anymore, and Daniel's overtime left them with little opportunity to address the issues that were seriously undermining their marriage. During the weekends, he would shut himself in the garage and play with anything he could find, only coming out to eat. Margaret had gone from thinking of herself as the happiest lady in the world to believing she was the most unhappy. She felt as though Daniel had never truly loved her, since all of her hopes and goals had vanished into thin air. Daniel had a heart attack just after Margaret and Daniel celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. Even before the doctor spoke, Margaret understood the diagnosis. With a gentle shake of his head, "Mrs. Hernandez, I think you should get ready for the worst," he said to Margaret. "Your spouse's heart is just exhausted. Due to his advanced age, a heart transplant is the only choice available." "He's 69, Margaret said. "He's just 69 years old. He said that he will retire." That evening, Margaret gave her kids a call, and along with Anna, her lone grandchild, they took a plane to New York to bid their final goodbyes. It was all over 2 weeks later. After Daniel had passed away, he had just silently held Margaret's hand, despite having talked fondly about the past to his children and grandkids. On his final day here on Earth, he had murmured, "Margaret, I love you. Just you. I have always done." Those were his final words, and they provided very little solace after so many years of uncertainty and sadness. Margaret's son and daughter departed immediately after the burial, although they had their own lives to live and sobbed for their father. Anna remained behind to assist Margaret in adjusting to her empty home and her miserable existence. Margaret got up the day after her kids departed and made the decision to erase everything from the past. She loaded all of Daniel's personal items into cardboard boxes for goodwill with Anna's assistance. As she was sealing the final box, she was attacked by the scent of flowers. She started to scream loudly, knocked the box over, and spilled all of the neatly folded contents. The entire tale just flowed out since Anna was there to comfort and embrace her. "He's been cheating on me for the last 12 years, coming to my bed every night smelling of another woman," Margaret cried. "And his last words to me were a lie." Margaret found relief from her suffering by crying and confiding in others. Anna proposed that they take over Daniel's garage as a way to eliminate any remaining pain. Stepping inside the garage, the two women immediately began going through the lifetime's worth of collected clutter. Anna then discovered an ancient suitcase with rusty locks in a corner. She chose to open it first, even though she was going to discard it since it felt weighty. Even without a key, the luggage could be opened with only a hand and an old wrench. "Grandma!" Anna let out a gasp. "Please come here." Margaret moved to her granddaughter's side, dropping the tin full of nails she had been going through. The suitcase was open, revealing an old notebook and carefully wrapped bundles of $20 cash within. Margaret gasped. "Where did this come from?" "This is a lot of money." Anna took the diary open. "Grandma, you really should read this," she whispered quietly. "After you were married, I believe he started saving every dime he could. Yes, this was 12 years ago. Pay attention. I began working the night shift as a sewer cleaner for the NYC Sanitation Department today. Although it's not an easy work, I have to ensure Margaret's future because the income is far more than my day job." Her father was correct. "I am not a winner. I'm resolved to return at least some of the things I cost her. I told Margaret that every night before I go home, I take a shower and sift through the overnight mail because I don't want her to find out. I refuse to bring that filth into our house." Anna was reading Daniel's story of his double life, and Margaret was softly crying. "See, Gran, each month he writes in what he stuffs inside the suitcase. There's around $300,000 in total." Margaret peered inside that worn-out luggage at the tangible evidence of her husband's unwavering love and his readiness to give anything up for her. She muttered, "Oh, Daniel, and I wasted so much time and resentment." Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.